Well, we never set out to write a book. It was the middle of October in 2017 when I received a call from Aaron Maldagan from the Tamil Refugee Council. And he wanted to tell me that we. Sorry, I think the moment's getting. You never say so. That we lost another person to Australia's horrific water regime, and I felt at the time really tired. Not the sort of tiredness that you feel when you want to go to bed. Just the tiredness that you feel for those of you that have been involved in the campaign for refugee rights. Know it, those who have followed the campaign for refugee rights, those of you who have been refugees, understand that over the last 20 years the situation has just gotten worse and worse and worse, and not just here in Australia but all around the world as states have become more authoritarian and the borders have become more militarised. And you feel so helpless at a time like that when you hear that someone's perished and they're not even anywhere close, but in a whole different country. All we could think to do was perhaps, what we usually do is rail. Next time. What we usually do is just rail against the government. We're quite good at that. But we felt that, well, maybe we should attempt to humanise this person, to show people that they were somebody that's just like them, to tell their story in some small way. To help get the message out that these people are not just names and numbers, but they are real human beings with their own aspirations, their own families, who are just desperate for a better life. So we said yes, we'd do this, and we thought that it would just be a short article. But as Aaron and another friend from the Tamil Refugee Council, Asanthan, who was familiar with Santhia, familiar with her organisation and the struggle that she'd been part of, started to explain more about who this young woman was. It became clear that she wasn't just like the rest of us, at least the people that I knew. She'd left school and home at 16, gone and joined the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, taking training in a rudimentary camp and joining the National War of Liberation. I found her story intriguing. Before we knew it, the Tamil Refugee Council had me in Sri Lanka and then Indonesia just several weeks after this. And it was at that time that the story began to, I guess, spiral out of control from being something that was going to be a short telling, recounting of somebody's life to humanise their story, into something much larger, because it became evident over there, obviously, as many of you would know, that while for many of us over here, Santhia's life was extraordinary, in Tamil Eelam and in the ranks of the Liberation Tigers, her story was quite ordinary. Many books could be written about the heroism of many of the activists, soldiers and cadres involved in the National Liberation War. And Santhia's doesn't stand out as more worthy of telling than any of the other thousands who fought, died, or were scattered to the four corners of the earth as political exiles in the struggle for national liberation. So her story very quickly morphed into a story not really about Santhia, although she appears in fragments during the essay, but really about this struggle for national liberation, which we thought needed more coverage in Australia. The essay that I've written as part of this book raises many questions that certainly couldn't be definitively answered by myself. The first, which is probably the most controversial, particularly for those of us in the West, or those of us that come from a different political tradition, as I do from that of the Liberation Tigers, was the question of the Tigers' armed struggle strategy to win national liberation. While I'm not in agreement with the politics of the Tigers, it became evident as we worked through the questions around the history of the oppression and genocide against Tamils and of the politics of the island, that in my opinion at least, the young Tamil radicals in the north and east in the early 1970s had absolutely no choice, or very few choices, but to take up arms. For several decades, every political avenue had been either tried or suffocated, and appallingly, the major left-wing parties, the Sinhalese in the south, had capitulated to the chauvinism and turned their backs on the Tamil national liberation struggle. So I could quite readily identify with the young people in the north feeling that they had no other option than to take up arms, begin a guerrilla struggle, which then morphed in the 1980s into a national liberation war. And for those of you that read the essay, you will see that there are some gestures to criticisms that I may have, but I thought because of that, and because I am somewhat of an interloper into this struggle and this history, I thought it only appropriate and fair that we should pair this essay with Anton Balasingh's seminal work, the Liberation Tigers and Tamil Freedom Struggle. Balasingh was the theorist and chief negotiator of the LTTE, and he wrote this essay in 1983. It was published in August, just a month after the Black July pogroms. I think it was important to include it not just so that the voices of those who led the National Liberation War could make their own case for why they launched it, but because the first two sections of his essay step through the history of the politics of Tamils on the island and the history of the increasing strangulation of the Tamil nation by the increasingly chauvinistic and actually single state. And I think it paints a compelling picture for all of those who may be queasy about struggle as to why people felt that they had no option in launching that in the end. Could the Tigers have won? That's a question for history, but I'm in no doubt that the Tigers could certainly have won through their armed struggle strategy, a separate state of Tamil Eelam. Of course, other issues would have arisen in the process of doing so, again, which I've gestured to in this essay, and again, which I think are hypothetical, given what ended up happening. Regardless of whether they may or may not have won under different circumstances, it is now abundantly clear that with the unification of the imperialist states against the Tigers in 2009, that the strategy had no answer to the combined might of the arms rest of the world and their strangulation through sea, air, and their support for the Sri Lankan regime as it carried out one of the most horrible genocides of the 21st century between September 2008 and May 2009, when the Tigers were finally militarily defeated and tens of thousands of civilians indiscriminately killed alongside their liberation leaders. The question that I believe is still unanswered, which I again gesture at in this essay, but which I think I give only unsatisfactory and partial comments on, is the question of why, at that particular time, from 2006, 2005, 2006, all the way to 2009, why did the international alignment of forces turn so decisively against the Tamil national liberation struggle? That's a question, which I say, I gesture towards an answer, but I have no good answer. I think some of what I say in this essay I've been speaking to Umesh from the Tamil Refugee Council, who came to me with his opinions very late in the day, I must say. He has convinced me that some of what I have to say is probably a bit off the mark, but I think there is a lot of work still to be done, and I'm hopeful. Umesh is over there chuckling to himself. I'm hoping that actually Umesh might lead some of this work, because I think there is more work to be done. And as Nero said, there's plenty of history and there's plenty of politics still to be worked out. And I think that is an area that needs someone to work on it. And hopefully the Tamil Refugee Council can continue on that front. Well, I wanted to say something, even though I feel thoroughly unqualified, but I think it would be irresponsible of me not to be honest. That is, what now? What now in the face of this genocidal disaster 10 years on? And what I have to say is really, it's only my opinion, but the first thing is that without struggle, the Tamil nation is greatly imperiled. What is going on in that country today with military occupation of the north and the east, a very heavy militarisation, particularly in the north, where you cannot go in some places 6 to 10 kilometres without encountering another military or security base, where you have colonisation schemes sending state-sponsored, sending Sinhala colonists into Tamil lands. We have the Sinhalisation of the north and the east. We have the strangulation, I should say, of the Tamil economy. It is clear what the intent of the Buddhist Sinhalese chauvinist state is. It is not peace on the island, or if it is, it's peace at the expense of the Tamil nation. On that front, it is clear that there are very hopeful signs today. That there has been a resurgence of activism across the north and the east. Nero mentioned the struggles for land rights, the struggles for the disappeared, the struggles against the military occupation, the struggles against the Sinhalisation. These are starting to grow again. And of course, the military defeat of the Tigers pushed the struggle back at least a generation. But there are hopeful signs that there is regroupment, that people are gaining confidence, and that may take off in the future, something that the nation can rally around and find and gain a pride in struggle once more. The key issue in my mind about this, the question of the Tamil nation, also revolves around the question of strategy. Now, it's not one for me to prescribe strategy. I was speaking to a professor in Jaffna who is adamant that it is inevitable, given the chokehold the Sinhalese state has, that it is inevitable that the armed struggle will rise again. That may or may not be true. If it is, I must say it looks like a suicide mission, given the conditions of the 21st century. But the one thing that has been the political catastrophe on that island has always been the failures of Sinhalese leadership of the left and the progressive forces to link up with their Tamil brothers and sisters in the north. There was a doctor in Jaffna who spoke about the Indian peacekeeping forces, misnamed, the invasion of the Indian Army in 1987 to quell the liberation movement in the north and the east of the country with the support to support the Sri Lankan military's quelling of the liberation struggle. At the time that happened, the People's Liberation Front in the south, which is a leftist Sinhala group, unfortunately incredibly chauvinist, unleashed its own uprising. And the doctor told me about the repeated attempts to get in touch, or not just to get in touch, to plead with the leadership of the People's Liberation Front that they were fighting the government and the Indian military, that the LTTE was fighting the government and the Indian military, that they had a common aim, and if they united their forces, they could have something better on the island for both the immiserated, unemployed peasant Sinhala in the south and the oppressed Tamil nation in the north. Unfortunately, every overture fell on deaf ears with the People's Liberation Front. But it is clear that the Sinhalese chauvinist state also has shown historically absolutely no compunction to put down its own so-called people. The two People's Liberation Front uprisings in the early 70s and the late 1980s resulted in thousands of Sinhalese youth murdered and imprisoned, and as the leadership of the Sri Lankan state has grown wealthier and fatter off the proceeds, the divide in that country has only been to the benefit of the people at the top and the top brass in the military armed forces. If there could be a united fight among the impoverished, poor, peasants and working class Sinhalese in the south with their Tamil brothers and sisters in the north, such great things could be made in that island, with so much wealth, so much beauty and so much potential, yet so much inequality, squalor and oppression. That, of course, is not something that the responsibility of weighs on Tamils. The responsibility for forming such a joint struggle falls solely on the shoulders of the leading Sinhalese left parties. If only they would take that path, that island, I believe, would be a much better place for everyone. And the final thing that I'd like to say, which isn't really about strategy, it's about the purpose of the book. Because as much as there is the ongoing struggle in Tamil Eelam for liberation, as much as there are so many people now in the diaspora spread, whether or not they're in Indonesian camps or in camps in Tamil Nadu or Thailand or camps here in Australia, there is an urgent need for international solidarity and education about what has happened on that island, because there is an ongoing whitewashing propaganda campaign led by the Sri Lankan government to say that everything is all right, to deny that genocide ever happened, and to suggest that this is a country that is like any other good-natured citizen of the world. It is a lie, and it is a lie that is founded on the deaths of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people on that island, and the misery of hundreds of thousands more, and the denial of self-determination to millions, both in the country and those of you here who have been denied your right to self-determination, who have had to flee to the four corners of the earth. So it's on that front that I hope that this essay will play a small role. I hope that pairing with Anton Barlasing's piece, his seminal piece, proves effective in both giving a bit of a contemporary flavour to the struggle, but also opening up a discussion about the historical nature of Tamil oppression and why the Tamil Tigers waged their struggle and their war of national liberation. I hope that it gestures towards discussions that are politically clarifying, and I hope that it is well received both by those of you who fought in the National Liberation War, those of you who are interested in the National Liberation War, those of you who know nothing about the struggle at all. We hope that this is a useful introduction, and we have a resources page at the back precisely because we think that if people enjoy this work, if people think the work valuable, there are plenty of other works out there and plenty of other ongoing research projects out there which are documenting the ongoing oppression of Tamils, which are very well worth investigating. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming. Thank the Tamil Refugee Council for their support in this project, and I'll hand you back to Nero, and I'll leave it at that for me.